everybody. My name is Nick Antonio, and the work I'm going to present today has been done while I was a summer intern at Georgia Tech. So I've been working with Chen Zhang, Simon, and Wenki. But I'm actually a PhD student at UC Santa Barbara, and if my advisors let me graduate in September, I'm going to join Eurocom as an assistant professor. So the work I'm going to present today is about starting from two permissions and hijacking the UI feedback loop. UI feedback loop is something like this, where basically you have the UI shows something to the user, and the user clicks on something through the same UI and reacts to it, and the UI actually updates itself so that the user understands, hey, the UI just reacted to what I did. So it's actually a loop. This paper has two main points. The first one is to show that if an attacker can kind of hijack the input and output channel in a passive and active way, then the attacker can do a lot of bad stuff. And the second point is it's actually possible to do so because of many design vulnerabilities we identified, and these vulnerabilities let us implement a number of new attacks which we called Cloak and Dagger. So we started from two permissions. Let me introduce these two permissions to you. The first one is system alert window. Informally, we call it draw on top. And basically, with this permission, an application can draw arbitrary overlays on top of the screen, arbitrary in terms of shape, the content, transparency, and so forth. And you can create these overlays in two ways, either clickable, so that they're going to get the click and be notified about this, or pass through. So the click goes through and reaches what's on the bottom of it. Okay? This permission is used quite a lot, 10% of top 5,000 applications, including top apps like Facebook, Skype, Uber, and so forth. The second permission is what we call accessibility service. An app can say, hey, I want to be an accessibility service, and this service is basically a mechanism so that application can help users with disabilities. And it's actually quite powerful. For example, if there is some UI thing that changes, it's going to get notified, and if the user clicks on a button, it's going to get notified. Or it can also be active and inject UI events such as clicks. There are also a number of apps using this system. For example, LastPass is using accessibility service to automatically fill your passwords in. Now, this service is very powerful, but there is kind of a boundary, right? And it shouldn't be able to access sensitive information, for example, password fields. And if you check the documentation, you will see a warning like this, where since privacy could be compromised, any event fired in response to password manipulation, they're not going to contain the password. So if you call, for example, getText method on a password widget, you're going to get the empty string. Okay? Now, before I go forward with the work and show you what we can do with super permissions, I want to address one question that I'm pretty sure it's up in your mind. Why would a user be so crazy to enable these permissions? Right? And if the user needs to enable them, it's not so stealthy attack, and the user might understand what's going on. Well, we found out that there is actually a way to get these two permissions without the user understanding what's going on. The first point is that the draw on top permissions is actually automatically granted for applications coming from the Play Store. And that was quite a surprise for us, but it turns out that it's not a bug, it's actually a Google decision because of many applications are using this, and now in the past it was automatically granted, and now changing this behavior will create a lot of backward compatibility issues. The second point is that we have a new attack based on clickjacking, so that from the draw on top permission, we can actually get the accessibility service without having the user understanding what's going on. So it's actually reasonable to get these two permissions. To make it worse, the list of permissions is never shown to the user. Specifically for newer Android, we're moving to a runtime granted permission where you will see pop-ups, but the draw on top is already granted. In accessibility, we have the attack to get it without notifying the user. And to make things even worse, these permissions are special and they're treated differently by the framework. And for example, if you go on Android 6, and this is my proof of concept, it's actually asking for these two permissions, but if you browse on the permissions item, you're going to see no permissions. Why? Because they're special. And so to actually see that this app is requiring permissions, you will need to browse to special permissions, who can draw on top, and things like this. Similar for the accessibility service, there is a dedicated menu so that you need to go there manually, but you're not going to see it here. And now I'm going to show you how, with these two permissions, we can do really bad stuff. Now, before I continue, I have a super quick introduction about clickjacking attacks. What I'm going to present now is already known. The goal of the attacker is to lure the user to click on the OK button, this guy. What the attacker does is to create an overlay on top, and then he creates a button, okay, in a way that when the user clicks on it, the click actually goes through and clicks on the OK button. After which, for example, in this case, the application has the accessibility service enabled, okay? Now, this was notified to Google, I think, 1.5 years ago from some researchers, and Google said, well, that's a problem, and we're gonna fix it. Google reaction was to introduce a security mechanism called the obscure flag. The obscure flag basically tells the OK button widget that when there is a click, if this flag is set, it means, hey, when the user clicked, there was actually something on top, so you should not trust this, this button. Okay, so it's actually useful to understand if there was something on top, the widget that got clicked. Our point here is, who says that you need to cover the target button to do click jacking? Think about this. We want the user to click the OK button. How about we cover everything else but the OK button? Like this. And, you know, given the current state of humanity at this point, it's actually pretty easy to convince a user to click on the OK button. The user is actually going to click it. So from a conceptual point of view, the design issue here is that there is no context information for the application to understand, did the user have enough information to authorize this, this operation? And that's the OK button for the accessibility service. So it's one of the most dangerous OK button, and that's the best protection mechanism up there as of now. So I believe the obscure flag, but the mechanism is conceptually broken, and you know, the framework should be sure that the entire UI maybe was free of overlays. Otherwise, there can be confusion. And the other problem is that we have a new technique, we call it context-aware clickjacking, and we show that we can have multi-step clickjacking attack where we can actually lure the user to enable accessibility service. We just need to eject 3 clicks. These 3 clicks do not need to be consecutive, very near in time. There is no guessing involved. There is no timing thing that you need to figure out. It just works in a deterministic way. Now, before I go to what you can do with accessibility service, I want to step back and say, okay, let's talk about this obscure flag mechanism, because we found out that not only is not useful, but it actually can be abused to do even worse things. Now, we have a new attack. We call it invisible grid attack. And with this attack, we can record all the keystrokes by only having the drawn top permission. So there is no clickjacking. There is nothing like this. Okay? And it works by using the obscure flag as a side channel. The attack works in this way. Imagine this is the phone laid down. The attacker can create a number of overlays, like organize one over each other. And these overlays are invisible, and the clicks pass through. So according to the user, nothing is actually on the screen. And the goal of the attacker is to understand where is the user clicking. Okay? So we found out there are some flags so that you can set up these overlays so that no matter where the user clicks, these overlays are going to receive a motion event. Okay? Of course, these events are not going to contain the click coordinates for security reasons, but at least they are notified. What we found is that these motion events actually contain the obscure flag. And so the trick is the following. If you click on number 1, well, number 1 impact point is actually low, so everything is saying, I'm not obscure. However, if you click on number 2, the impact point is actually higher than number 1, and number 1 is saying, I'm obscured. So the attacker can actually collect the patterns of obscure bits, and it can actually understand where the user clicks based on these obscure bits, if they're set or not. And the irony is that this is actually a security mechanism, and here we show how we can use it as a side channel. Now, the way you weaponize this is to create multiple overlays, maybe one over each of the key of the keyboard, and now basically you know exactly what the user is typing. Of course, during a real attack, these overlays will be invisible. Now, the big problem, in our opinion here, is that there is a clear violation of the principle of least privilege. Why would an application be able to create invisible overlays, right? And another problem we found is that the window manager is extremely complex. There are hundreds of flags, and you know there is the risk of introducing unexpected side channels, like the one I show now. And the other problem we identified is that it seems like UI security is like an afterthought. I don't want to say that Google doesn't care about this, but what our feeling is that it's less understood thing, and it's less systematic than protection mechanisms against buffer overflow or things like this. Now, back on accessibility service, what can we do about this? Well, we found another design issue, which is that by default, all UI objects are considered non-security sensitive. And we know in security, the security should be the rule, not the exception. And so, the password fields are actually protected. You cannot get the password. However, you risk to forget some important UI objects. For example, we found that the widgets constituting the actual keyboard are actually considered as normal. And so whenever we press on a key, the stability service is actually generating an event, and you know exactly where the user is typing, even if you're typing a password. Same goes for two-factor authentication tokens. This is the Google Authenticator application. Everything is not protected. My favorite is actually the security pad through which you unlock the phone. So whenever you click on one of these buttons, there is an event that reaches the malicious app. And so we can steal the PIN. We can actually inject the PIN and unlock your phone. And the cherry on the cake is that we can do this while keeping the screen completely off. Because apparently the accessibility service doesn't trigger other system that says, oh, maybe I should go up. So we have a scenario where basically you have the user actually staring at his phone on the desk, and he needs to lose complete trust in the phone. You have no idea about what's going on. Now you have other attacks where you can mix these two permissions in an interesting way. For example, we have a new variation of a phishing where you have the Facebook app, and then the user is about to enter the credentials. What we do is to draw something on top of it. As classic phishing, the user is going to interact with us and put the credentials in. In traditional phishing attacks, now the user would, the password is gone, but the user will find himself not logged in. So he has a chance to be understanding, what happened. With a stability service instead, what we can do is to take the real Facebook app, take the password we stole, fill it in, click login, and the user is actually logged in. So there is complete UI in the middle attack, and the user has absolutely no chance to detect this. Another variation is that we can use a draw on top permission to draw something on the screen, like a video, in a way that the clicks pass through. So while the user is actually checking the video out, we actually do bad things on the bottom. And so in front of the user, we can actually, install secondary malicious applications, enable all the permissions, and then we can also do some cleanup steps, such as dismissing all the recent views, maybe uninstalling the initial malicious applications, and things like this. Now, I hope I convinced you these attacks are pretty bad. And the other question is, are these practical? Well, we did a user study. I recruited 20 human subjects, and we tested the 3 most technically difficult attacks we had: clickjacking, silent God mode app installation, and stealthy phishing. And the results are pretty bad. Clickjacking, nobody got it. The app installation, nobody understood anything. Stealthy phishing, 18 out of 20 fell for it. 2 of them found some graphical glitches. It turns out they actually triggered a bug on my prototype. So what I did is actually to fix the bug, and then I gave the phone back, and I told them, guys, I'm going to attack you. Let's see if you can detect it. And even if I told them they were under attack, they had no clue if they were under attack or not. So we believe these attacks are actually practical. The other question we asked is, guys, do you know about these 2 permissions, by the way? Well, it seems they don't. The big problem here is that, since these permissions don't appear in the classic list, and you need to browse through special menus, well, if the users don't know about these permissions in the first place, why would they go around in special menus to find them, right? So there is a big delta between what we think users know and what they actually know. So how can we fix this? Well, the first thing we did was to responsibly disclose these bugs to Google. So we started with the simple bugs, let's say, and to see how it was going. And so we started with invisible grid attack, and it was recognized as moderate severity, but unfortunately it's not fixed yet. And then I reported, accessibility service, documentation states you cannot steal the password, and we found you can unlock the phone with the screen off and things like this. Well, it was not well received at the beginning, so what happened is the following. Martha's won't fix, work as intended, at which point I said, guys, there is a security note, and I can do stuff that your documentation says you shouldn't be able to do. Okay, mark as high severity, at which point we were extremely happy, champagne everywhere, and so forth. However, 1 month after, said, we are not going to fix it, because limiting those services would render the device unusable. And here the problem is that we are mixing things like, I don't know how to fix it, with it should not be fixed, right? And so we kept pushing, say, guys, the documentation says otherwise, we're going to update the documentation. So this is related to the security note saying that you shouldn't be able to get the passwords. I'm still fighting with them saying, guys, you shouldn't be able to unlock the phone automatically with the screen off and things like this, so we might have updates later. But anyway, so, okay, we're not going to get money with this. Fine, we have the clickjacking technique. It actually works in all versions of Android, which is pretty bad. And however, I try to look for the rewards things and which bugs actually qualify for this. And there is something like this there, where they say some classes do not qualify. And guess what? tab jacking, which is like click jacking, and URL addressing do not qualify for this, which made me really, really sad. Because, come on, guys, I'm a PhD student, extremely poor. I'm going to be a professor in France. So economic-wise, my situation is not going to improve. I'm relying on this money. But, now kidding apart, my point is that it's quite tricky to communicate these things through bug issues because it seems that these UI bugs are not perceived as like top-tier bugs. And we hope that this work is going to change the perception about this. So what we did for the, says Smiley. What we did for the next ones, we had this opportunity to share the paper with Adrian Ludwig, who is the head of Android security. So best of our understanding is that this paper has been read and considered seriously by the team. Unfortunately, we have currently no news about what's going on with the fixes and so forth. And all the attacks I just presented, and also the other ones I have in the paper, are actually still working, latest version of Android, even with the latest security patches. Now, we also have a number of short-term recommendations for Google. The drone top permission really should not be automatically granted. And now I show you a way how to abuse it. There was, I think, a report a couple of weeks ago showing how this permission is the same permission used by ransomware. And as of now, it's weird when it's so much powerful permission is actually automatically granted. And the other point I have is that maybe applications requiring both permissions should be vetted in a specific way. So I did a quick experiment. I wrote up a super malicious app, like dynamic code loading, requiring these two permissions, and it got accepted. A few hours, and I think it's still there. And I submitted this 8 months ago or something. Of course, it's not weaponized, right? But the attacker, in theory, could flip the bit on the back end and then serve malware. And so since the number of apps requiring both of these permissions should be quite low, maybe manual vetting should be possible in this case. In the paper, we also describe a number of ways to secure the UI. We try to propose secure apps and widgets, things like this, or guarantees that the OS should enforce for the secure apps and widgets. And in certain scenarios, maybe we should have something like system pop-ups, like the web pop-ups we used to know, like where you cannot really configure them. It's like something with a message, with the icon of the app generating this, and that's about it. Of course, I don't have time to describe our proposal, but all the details are in the paper. So I'm going to conclude. We present the Cloak and Dagger attacks. We believe are stealthy, powerful, and practical, and these are new ways to abuse these problematic permissions that we were aware. The big point of this paper is UI security bugs matter. I strongly believe, as of now, these are the low-hanging fruits for the attackers, and these are much more practical to actually implement also, with respect to low-level like things and exploitation. And there is a big difference between, we don't know how to fix it, we should not fix it. So we are personally still trying to fight to try to make Android security better. We put up more information on a website. You have more details about the responsible disclosure process and things like this. We are going to try to keep it updated with Google Reaction. This is my contact information. If you work for Google and if you think you can help us out, please reach us out. We would love to talk to you. Thank you all very much.
We have time for maybe 2 questions.
Isaac Sheff, Cornell. I think this is really great work, and it's an example that as long as you can slide something between the application and the user, no matter how good your security system is under the hood, there can still be problems. Do you think it would be more acceptable to the powers that be to limit the power of applications that draw on top to create simulated clicks and user input than it would be to limit the power of applications that draw on top to create simulated pixels for the user?
No, I'm not sure I get it. You're saying you want to limit the power of these drawn tops so that you could
they can still show arbitrary pixels to the user, but they can't simulate user input to applications underneath.
Oh, I see. So basically you're saying, okay, drawn top, you can draw whatever you want, but you want to avoid that clicks pass through the overlays. That would be an option. But I think there might be some cases where that's actually a good feature to have, in a sense that you have these overlays. But I agree with you that that should be probably removed. There is a much easier way to fix this at this point, at least for this short-term recommendation. Nothing should be shown whenever you're playing with the settings application. So and this wouldn't break applications, right? Because you can make the application believe that the overlay is actually displayed. The system would just not display it. The application doesn't know it. So it's not that Facebook chat ads is going to crash because so that's one practical way, and still you can have these pass-through overlays. But yeah, that might be a way.
Hi, Stanislav Mišković from Splunk. And in a previous life, let's say up to 2015, we were collaborating with you, and we did some work on Android and markets and so on. So first question is actually just to know whether this is still prevalent. So you have, I think, more than 200 privileges in Android, right? And we figured out that only 40-ish or so are used, but those 40 grant you anything, right? And did you really have to go through the effort to explaining us how this serious when basically all users automatically grant anything?
That's a very good point. My personal belief is that yes, we have a user problem in the sense that they are super excited, they want to grant everything. On the other side, that's not a good excuse to not try to fix system security. So I agree with you. As of now, I think it could be very simple, even without these tags, to get some privileged permissions because the users just give it to you. But on the other side, this problem is something I can fight with Google, and it should be fixed no matter what. Because even a security savvy person actually would fall for it. Actually, I think half of the human subjects I play with during the experiment were PhD students at Georgia Tech. So these are security people, and they can also fall for it. So that's, but.
So in just a short last one. So the implications of them not fixing this. So is this basically draw on top affecting pop-up notifications? Is it the same privilege? And you know that some applications are anyway running in the background even when you are logged out. So are they concerned with that or something else?
So for the draw on top, I think it's just technical issue in the sense that we have used a specific functionality of this obscure flag. And honestly, we show that it doesn't matter. Even if he's not there, we still can win. So I think they should just disable this propagation of obscure flag. And so if you just do this, it's not going to affect any existing application. So unfortunately, we asked for update. We didn't get any. So we know it's considered as a bug, and they're going to fix it. But I don't have more information on this.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.